Hello, and thank you for joining me today at Community Kitchens at Home Edition. My name is Pauline, and welcome to my kitchen. Now, before we begin, let's take 20 to 30 seconds and wash our hands with some warm water and soap. For this recipe, for the dough you will need 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast or 1 packet, 1/4 teaspoon of granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of warm water, 1/2 cup of warm milk, 1/4 cup of butter melted, 2/3 cup of granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 cup of pumpkin puree, 5 to 6 cups of all-purpose flour. For the filling, you will need 2 tablespoons of very soft butter, 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, optional. We're going to start today's recipe by proofing our yeast. We're going to add in our warm liquid, some salt, tiny bit of sugar, and our yeast to a mixing bowl. We're going to let this rise for approximately 10 minutes until it's nice and foamy. Now that our yeast is ready, we're going to start adding in the rest of our dough ingredients. Now, if you really want to kick up the fall flavors a notch, simply add some cinnamon, some nutmeg, or some cardamom right to the dough, and that'll just add an extra flavor. Now, when we get to adding in the flour, we're going to add in only approximately 1/2 of what we have measured out and work from there. We're going to mix all of our ingredients together using either the dough hook on a mixer, or you can mix by hand. As the dough starts to come together, add in 1/2 cup of flour at a time and mix until we get a dough that is nice and soft and it pulls away from the side of the bowl. You can also stop the mixer, test it with your hand. If it doesn't stick to your hand anymore, then it's good to go. If you notice, I've used maybe 4 out of the 6 cups of flour that I had measured out. Once you've added in your last 1/2 cup of flour and you have a nice smooth dough, we're going to remove it from the bowl and place it on a floured surface. The flour on your counter will make sure that it doesn't stick as you're kneading. We're going to give it a knead for about maybe not even a minute, just until we have a nice round dough ball formed. Next, we're going to add some oil to our bowl, add the dough back in, and roll the dough around until it's covered in olive oil. We're then going to let it set for approximately an hour in a warm, draft-free area until it is doubled in size. Now that our dough is doubled in size, we're going to put quite a bit of flour on our board and dump the dough out. Flatten the dough down with your hands, flip it over so both sides are covered in flour, and roll out with a rolling pin. I like to turn mine every little bit so to make sure it doesn't stick to the counter. We're going to want to make this into a rectangle shape. Once we have our dough rolled out into a 24 by 12 inch rectangle, we're going to take our softened butter and spread in an even layer on the dough. This step helps the brown sugar and cinnamon and nutmeg stick to the dough when rolling. Once you have your butter spread around, sprinkle your brown sugar onto the dough and then use your hand to make sure it's in a nice even layer and to break up any of the large pieces that may have formed in your brown sugar. Next, go on the spices. Instead of using cinnamon and nutmeg on this recipe, I use cinnamon and my other favorite fall flavor, which is cardamom. It just gives a bit different flavor to the cinnamon buns. Next, we're going to take the long edge of our dough and start rolling. We want this to be a nice, tight, even roll. And then we're going to tuck in the ends and the underneath part. Once we have our dough rolled up, we are going to cut into 12 to 16 even rolls. We will place this into a greased baking pan, cover, and let rise again for an hour or until doubled in size. Once they've doubled in size, we're going to bake for 20 to 25 minutes at 350 degrees or until golden brown. Remove from the oven and cool a couple minutes before frosting with your favorite frosting, or if you're like our family, just eat them the way they are. To catch new episodes, make sure you go to Algoma Family Services Facebook page. And if you want to see some other episodes, head on over to YouTube, Algoma Family Services, and you can see lots there. Hope to see you next time.